You are now tuned into the People Before Politics radio show, brought to you by the good folks at
Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester. Check the newspaper. Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester. Check the newspaper.
Real talk for the community since 2014. Welcome back. You are tuned into hour 2 of Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show. This is episode 334. Again, I just wanted to mention, as I did in the beginning, for those who missed, I am being honored this Friday by the Mediterranean people and community. They're called Impact. They're blessing me with the Community Service Award. And as I said, we just had a conversation on CUNY, the importance of CUNY. On a personal note, I just received, for the second year in a row, a journalism fellowship from the Craig Newmark Journalism School, Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY. And like last year, it was a paid fellowship. Last year, it was to cover the New York City races. And this year is to cover the statewide races. And one of the things, if you've seen my Facebook page or any of my social media, I've been looking for individuals who to interview about the redistricting, the new maps, the court rejecting the maps, saying it was gerrymandering from the Democrats, and how that's going to affect the upcoming election and even the candidates, because candidates are now campaigning and getting petitions signed in the new map on these new districts that may not stand. And if they're moved and redrawn, they might be getting signatures now that they might not be able to use, and then have to go back and then figure out the new configuration. So I'm looking for individuals that I can talk to that want to talk about that, talk intelligently about that, and I will be interviewing them. You can, if you're interested in anything like that, you can contact me at Black Westchester Mag, Black Westchester MAG at gmail.com, and put redistricting article in the subject matter. For our second hour, I've been doing more community engagement. I ask people what they want to see. And Sandy Barnaby, a good friend of the show, she wanted to come on and talk about the there we go. She wanted to talk about the ending qualified immunity and the upcoming rally that's going to take place. So I'm going to let her say hello and introduce the guest that she has come on for the second hour.
AJ, first let me congratulate you, Dr. Bob. That was a great program.
It's good to see you, Sandy. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Same here. Thank you. AJ, I just want to acknowledge you for all of the recognition that's coming your way in 2022. Finally, every day you wake up, every day you do this work, your consistency, right? The momentum that you've built, the respect that you've earned, and it just, all of us just feel so happy that this acknowledgement is coming your way, and all good things are beginning to unfold for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I definitely appreciate that, and I have to say, you can't hear that enough, because most of the time when you hear stuff, it's critical stuff. People, comment mostly when they're not happy with something you wrote, or there's a critique about how you should do it, and so it's always good to be acknowledged when people who appreciate the work. So I thank you for saying that.
Yeah, people may be unhappy with what you're writing, but for the community, for us, we know where we can come and get the truth. Right? We hear something, and we trust the reporting. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And who do we have here? Well, Everybody knows you, but tell everybody who you are, what you
Thank
do, and
you.
then
Yeah, my
introduce
name
our
is
guest.
Sandy Burnaby. I'm a white anti-racist organizer with the Anti-Racist Alliance. We've been organizing in Westchester with ongoing racism workshops for the past 20 years. There's hundreds of us, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of us in Westchester. And we fill the rooms of people organizing for the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform, and for people who are organizing to end qualified immunity, and people who are organizing to, for the halt to end solitary confinement. AJ, are the others here? Is
They're
Katerina?
all here. Yes,
Okay.
everybody's here. I'm just waiting for you to introduce them.
Okay, so the Darlene McDay, of course, is a mother who was impacted personally with her losing her son at the hands of correction officers, and she'll speak. Katerina is an organizer working with Darlene to pass a piece of legislation that we'll talk about tonight, but really wanting everybody to get on board for this great grand push to pass end qualified immunity in New York by June the 2nd. And then we have Patrick Shelley, who is a member of the Anti-Racist Alliance and also Alternatives to Incarceration. There you are, Patrick. And he's like an amazing person. He did a day of action. He's helped us organize next Saturday. We're going to have a Family Justice Day at the White Plains Fountain at the corner of Mamaroneck and Main Street. And we're here to talk about that.
Yes. So I do want to note, for those of you who are interested in communicating more directly with the members of the NQI New York, we have here on screen the text message number where you can send them a text message, and it'll allow you to communicate with your representatives. I know a couple of weeks ago, you guys organized a virtual rally. I think it was a Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what Patrick organized.
Patty organized, Patrick organized. Kudos to Patty for taking the lead in this. And I know there were quite a few folks online. I participated, AJ participated. And one of the things that we were able to do was to send some sort of automated message to our representatives. I know you guys have robo stuff. I was like really impressed with the level of technological assistance that you were able to put together. I know this is really the first time I've seen it, although I know organizers are doing this. Hats off to you guys for that.
Okay.
Thank you. And one thing I have to say is, Darlene and I are organizing across the state to get this bill passed, to get the bill to end qualified immunity passed. But the fire and the passion and the organizing and the energy that we feel and we see in Westchester is unmatched. And so we're really, really, really grateful to be able to organize with Patty, with Sandy, with the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform, with Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., with Nancy Maldonado, with everyone, the amazing, amazing people in Westchester who many of whom have been thrown into this fight without a choice, but who are just incredible leaders in this. So thank you to everyone in Westchester.
And I'll just say hi to everyone. Yes, hi. And AJ, congratulations this week on your award. Yes. And I heard you the other day on Lane's show, Race Talk, and it was very interesting for you to tell the whole history of how Black Westchester came to be. So congratulations, well deserved. And I know that you work so hard. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
Well,
and I wanted to shout out definitely Lane Cobb for having me on her show. You can see the interview on blackwestchester.com and talking about the history of how Black Westchester got started. We have a book coming out in June, somewhere around June 15th, Black Westchester, the origin story, and how my faith was instrumental in this grand experiment. And that should be coming out around the 15th of June. So, Patty Duke, it says Patrick, but we know you as Patty Duke. So, as Patty Duke, what's going on, sir?
Good evening, everybody. And it's great to be here again with the NQI NY team. This is a very strategic and organized group right here. So if you go check out their website, their social media, you will get all the informative information that you need to learn more about qualified immunity, especially if the topic is something new to you. So again, really great to be in the space with you. And of course, AJ and Dr. Bob, good to be with you as well.
No doubt.
Absolutely. I do want to, before we continue, I do want to echo the congratulations that everyone has extended to AJ for the tremendous work that he's done. As a guy who has worked with him closely for the past 5 years or so, since about was it about 2015, might be close to 7 years now. I can tell
we met 2015 at the in the Richard Thomas campaign.
Right, and since that time we've worked very closely together, offering assistance to AJ and to Damon, and other people who have been part of the Black Westchester media movement. And I can tell you that this brother works doggedly. AJ and I are often up till the wee hours of the morning. I know last week we were on the phone quite a bit when we were talking about, for example, the controversial ruling that was issued by Mount Vernon City Court Justice Bill Edwards that dismissed charges against an officer who had was facing who had been indicted on reckless endangerment. This is just an example, and the reinvigoration of the public sphere cannot occur if we don't have brothers and sisters who are willing to work often, endless hours, often under thankless circumstances. And, I'm here to testify to everyone that AJ really does make a tremendous effort at this. And we really do appreciate. I know he appreciates. I can tell you, he appreciates, but I appreciate for him as well. When we have our allies in the community who are willing to lend their expertise and insights and alert us to so many of the important issues that we will otherwise be unaware of. And so it's as much a congratulations to AJ as it is to the entire team of people, network of people who support him. And AJ knows those folk well. But in any event, I don't want to go on too long.
So we were on for a few weeks.
Well, thank you for all your kind words, your checks in the mail. I greatly appreciate that. No, I think we're having a little Wi-Fi problem. I know.
You keep going, AJ.
I'm not sure who was speaking. Go ahead.
You asked the question, brother.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And we'll move on. I think we're having a little Wi-Fi problem, probably a little delay. So please work with us. It's it's doing the show at home. Not in the studio. COVID is one of the effects of COVID. So every now and then we have individual Wi-Fi issues, and sometimes we have a delay. So I thank everybody. I just asked now. I wanted y'all to talk about the event. Talk more in depth about the event that's coming up. What is it? Why y'all are doing it, and fill everybody in about it.
Darlene, you want to take this?
Okay, I thought you would, but I'll take it. Okay, so the event on Saturday we called it a Family Day for Justice. It's all about highlighting families that have lost loved ones, including myself and Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. and Nancy Maldonado and Tamara Carter and, other families. And it's really to, number one, educate people of Westchester that are unfamiliar with qualified immunity, also invite them to act upon it, upon, what can be done about it. And also to have some fun together. This is a serious topic, but something that we don't want to always, make so solemn. So we really want to, have fun with everyone in Westchester as well.
So free ice cream for kids, different arts programming, music, and something that has been amazing and inspiring for me, at least, in having the honor of working with people who have experienced the worst of the worst is that we still find a way to laugh and have fun together. And so we want to honor the joy and make it a place, where we can really take action to make sure that no other family has to experience these horrors. And, again, like Darlene said, educate people, but also have fun and have concrete ways to take action. And so we'll be on the corner, like Sandy said, the corner of Mamaroneck Avenue and Main Street in White Plains, Saturday morning, next Saturday, April 9th, from 11:30 to 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm. What we want is, the reason why we're organizing is we believe that everybody deserves their day in court. And one of the reasons why we need to support families is because too many families don't get their day in court because of qualified immunity. You know that Kenneth Chamberlain for 10 years has wanted to have his day in court. And I think just now that they have decided that qualified immunity would no longer protect or be a factor in, shielding and protecting the police officer who shot his father. But not every family gets that opportunity. And we're going to just talk a little bit about that. I kind of feel like we should give a recap in case somebody just popped in and they say, well, what's this legislation about? So Katerina, I'm just wondering if you would do that.
Yeah. So very simply, qualified immunity is a shield from accountability that all government officials have. But in practice, it means that, someone who has been harmed by the state or a family member who has been harmed by the state, whether it's that a loved one has been killed or otherwise, has to find a case that's exactly the same. And I mean exactly the same, from the same jurisdiction. And that's a really, really almost impossible barrier to overcome, according to the civil rights, like the most premier civil rights litigators in our country. So it ends up being a barrier for us to protect our constitutional rights. And then it ends up becoming a pass for government officials to violate our rights. So the courts are not always even asking, has a constitutional right occurred, which means, that we're not even establishing what is that case law, so that no one in the future can point to that, that same case law that they need in order to have their constitutional rights protected. So that, that's what qualified immunity is. When you get into the weeds of it, you find out how insidious, how really truly troubling it is, because it gives a pass for police officers, for corrections officers, for any government official to violate our rights with impunity. But we need to end it because everyone should be held to the same standard of the law. So, for example, if you and I went into someone's home and stole $225,000, for sure we would be held liable for that. But when police officers went into someone's home and stole $225,000 from someone while executing a search warrant, they got away with it simply because there was no case where a police officer had been found guilty in the past of stealing $225,000 from someone while executing a search warrant. So, what we really are fighting for is to make sure that everyone has a chance at justice, particularly families like Darlene, like Ken Chamberlain Jr., like Nancy Maldonado, too many Westchester families. That we were really acting, in a system where there's one system of law for all of us, and that we really take these steps to change this culture of impunity so that this violence doesn't happen. We want to prevent this violence from happening in the first place. It's not about punishing people. It's about preventing the violence from happening in the first place.
Patrick and Darlene, can y'all tell us how y'all got involved in this fight? Let me hear from Patrick, and then I know Darlene's story. I want to hear for the people that missed it last time to hear your story. So Patrick, what made you get involved in this fight?
Sure thing. So my day job here in Westchester County is I'm actually a social worker, and I work with youth programs. So I'm trained in trauma systems therapy. So really our overall lens in working with young people is to address the cycles of trauma that can happen on a micro level in their individual lives, but then on a macro level as well, right? So when you're looking at things like mass incarceration, the police system, you're looking at the impact of systemic racism and intergenerational trauma. So how that can play out within family members and how that can impact children and then their children. So with that being my background, hopping in and joining in with the advocacy groups here in Westchester County has been a big part of my passion and my purpose, joining with WCPR for efforts around police transformation is really pivotal. So you'll see with this End Qualified Immunity bill that we're looking to pass it's really trying to, it's just another aspect of trying to halt, intergenerational trauma that does happen and is impacted by police.
Darlene?
Hi. Yeah. So I became familiar with qualified immunity a few years ago. First, my son Dante was in a prison in Buffalo, New York, and I received a call one morning from someone that was incarcerated there telling me that my son was severely beaten by officers. They said about 15 officers went into his cell and beat him so severely that his head and face were deformed. He was hogtied, dragged out, and then they had no other information. So when I called the facility after getting the runaround a few hours later, I received a call from a reverend telling me that my 22-year-old son was dead. And that was in 2017. And then in the preceding years that passed, as I tried to find an attorney and kept getting turned down, I fought to get information myself through FOIL requests. I got pictures of my son severely beaten, medical records, reports from the officers, several things. And with all that, I finally was able to get an attorney after about 2.5 years, presenting the case to them myself, essentially. And, many families aren't able to do that. They don't even know where to start. I don't even know how I figured out how to start. But thank God I did. And when I presented that to the attorneys, and the attorneys finally took the case after 2.5 years, after we got into court, filed the case, I heard about qualified immunity and what it was. And essentially, it's a pass. It's something that we have to overcome. It comes up several times in court. We may have overcome it in the very beginning, but it will come up again. And it's really just a slap in the face. I mean, I really find it a slap in the face. My son, the pictures of my son are so horrendous. And for somebody to say, I'm entitled to qualified immunity is just something I just cannot understand. And so many families, as I spoke about Tamara Carter, in speaking to her, she hasn't been able to file yet because they don't have enough information. And her son died in Rikers Island. And as we all know, Rikers Island is a horrendous place to be. And so many people have died there. And what are they doing to prevent that? And qualified immunity is one of those things that we believe is one of the barriers, number one, and one of the things that causes officers to act with impunity. So we want it to end once and for all.
Mm-hmm.
The things, and I heard, Katarina speak about case law. Oops, let me put the screen back. I heard speak about case law. And one of the things that's important, a lot of times in cases like this, when someone loses a loved one at the hands of law enforcement, they try to settle. And it's not just to make it go away, but then there is also no case law. You know what I'm saying? There's no, like, if you saw it all the way through and you won, there is actual case law. So the next person who's going through something can actually refer to that. But that's why they try to get families to settle. And unfortunately, a lot of these are families maybe not well-to-do, and throwing money at them is a way to go make it go away, because a lot of the people can use the money. But I just want to speak about the importance of case law. We don't often think about that, or we don't hear that even mentioned in our communities enough. So that's why it's important sometimes to follow the case all the way through, because you are creating case law for the next cases to come.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the most amazing things I'll say. My love and respect for Darlene goes so far and so deep. But like, if we were to pass the bill to end qualified immunity, S1991, which is the bill we're all fighting to get passed, that doesn't change Darlene's case, right? But she's thinking about what happens when you move forward, what happens for the next family. And I think you're totally right, AJ, right? Like, we need to be establishing this case law. This bill, if we were to pass this bill, it would prohibit the use of qualified immunity, period. So we wouldn't get in this cycle of where we would have to find a case that is identical enough. And the way the courts determine what is identical enough is really disturbing. And so it's almost like the more creative you are in the way that you violate our rights, the more likely you are to get away with it, which is, is truly disturbing, and is a problem. And so moving forward, there are so many things that are amazing about the bill that we want to pass by June 2nd, like Sandy said. But one of them is that it would prohibit the use of qualified immunity. It creates a path in New York State courts so that we can sue government officials when they violate our rights, so that we can simply protect our constitutional rights when they've been violated. And people can't use this slap in the face defense, as Darlene calls it, when they do. And the other really important thing is, to your point, AJ, is that it would also incentivize attorneys to take these cases on. So Darlene's, sorry for, sharing parts of your story. We're Darlene and I are a duo, but Darlene was rejected by more than 20 law firms before she finally found a law firm to take her case, because lawyers, as it stands right now, know it's not going to be in their cost benefit analysis. Like, it's not in their interest to take these cases on, because it is so difficult to overcome the barrier of qualified immunity. So we need to eliminate this barrier of qualified immunity. We need to pass this bill so that there are financial incentives for lawyers to take these cases on, not just for individuals, which is extremely important to us. We believe that individual families have to get justice. They have the right to get justice when they or their loved ones' rights have been violated, but also because it will lead to the systemic change that we need. So let's say, even if you didn't win your case, if this bill were passed, but it led to some change within the police agency, within the city, within some greater department, some systemic change, your lawyer's fees could still be provided for. And so that's what we want to see. We want to see justice for families, and we want to see the systemic change. We want to see agencies have to make changes to ensure that the rights and the safety of every single New Yorker is taken into account as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. AJ, can I say something?
Yes.
One of the strengths of the New York state legislation is that it also ends qualified immunity for correction officers. So it's not just police officers out, working with the public. Darlene's situation, these were correction officers, and everybody's like, well, I don't know what happened. I didn't see it. I wasn't there. I'm with social workers and allies to end solitary confinement. And one of the things that we're also trying to pass, and I'm not taking away from this one, which is an anti-torture bill, which would require healthcare professionals, doctors, social workers, if you see abuse and torture in the prisons, that you would become a mandated reporter. Because look at Darlene's son was seen by so many people. What did the nurse say? What did the social worker say? How were these correction officers, disciplined? It's like a whole system. So if we can end qualified immunity, of course, for correction officers, but then for the people who are inside, if you see something, you have to say something if you're a professional, because your code of ethics requires that. So it's like a hand in glove kind of a thing. So, ending qualified immunity is a huge, huge breakthrough for justice. And then there are other things that we can also implement to make sure that, violence ends, that people have their day in court. And I will never forget when Katerina said that in New York City, they ended qualified immunity. The city council did. And what did the commissioner say? Or what did the police chief say to the officers in the next morning, Katerina?
So the police unions wrote a letter to all of their members, right after New York City limited qualified immunity in a very small way. They said, do not engage in any interactions with the public unless you are, quote, clearly and unequivocally sure your actions are within the bounds of the law. That's what we want. We want all government officials to be acting within the bounds of the law. And qualified immunity allows some government officials to act above the law. And that's what we're saying we're not going to accept anymore. And it's time to end it, and time to make sure that just like you and I have to act within the bounds of the law, so do all government officials have to act within the bounds of the law.
So you mentioned that the bill is Senate Bill 191, I believe. We provided a link to our viewers who want to take a closer look at the legislation. But I also went ahead and cribbed some of the main provisions right now. If AJ could share my screen, just so we can have an accurate understanding of what the bill actually does. As you noted, number one, it provides for, and I'll increase this, everybody. This is taken directly from the statement of the bill online. It number one, allows for attorneys to recover reasonable fees, and as Katerina said, one of the deterrents to bringing actions against officers who are believed to have abused their authority under qualified immunity provisions and unjustly acted under color of law is the fact that it's very difficult to get an attorney. Unfortunately, as Darlene case illustrates. It also eliminates the defense that is frequently invoked in court, that a officer of the law acted in good faith but erroneously, and ultimately led to serious injury, if not the taking of someone's life. It is also should be noted, everyone, that a public entity can indemnify its employees. It doesn't do away with indemnification altogether, but it says that if you have been convicted of a crime, you are in criminal court, you are no longer able to shield yourself from further sanctions for your misconduct. And so I think it's very important for us to be aware of this. Again, people can take a further look at it. One thing I'm curious to know is what exactly is the status of the bill right now? Where is it in the legislative process? How far along has it already proceeded? How far along does it before it ultimately will be enacted?
So we have 22 co-sponsors, which is like a third of the Senate has co-sponsored this bill. That means they have put their name on this bill, that they so strongly believe that this bill needs to be passed, that they've named themselves as co-sponsors. I lost track because we've been getting a bunch of new co-sponsors, but I think we're at 44 in the Assembly, which again is an amazing number. And so there's growing momentum. These are co-sponsors from all across the state of New York. So this isn't a downstate issue. The bill was introduced by Pam Hunter in the Assembly, who's an amazing Assembly member from Syracuse. We have sponsors in the Senate and the Assembly from Rochester, from Buffalo, from Long Island, from New York City, of course, from Albany. Our latest co-sponsor is Neil Bresnan in Albany. One of my favorite things that ever was said to me in any meeting was from a high-level legislative aide was like, he looked at our list of co-sponsors and he was like, it's not even just the usual fire breathers. And I think that points to the fact that this is really common sense legislation that people understand. If you believe that we need to protect our constitutional rights, then you believe in passing this bill. Westchester, there's a lot of work we have to do in Westchester. Senator Biaggi, Senator Bailey, they are co-sponsors of this bill, but there are a lot of senators that we need to get on board in Westchester. We need to get Senator Shelley Mayer. We need to get Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins on board, really get them to move this bill forward, because the bill is in committee still, in both of the committees. We need a lot of support, again, also from the Assembly. Assembly member Pretlow from Westchester is on board with the bill, but there's still many more Assembly members that we need to get on board in Westchester specifically. But the momentum is growing. And so we invite all Westchester representatives to join, to do not only what is right, because we know that this is what is just, this is what is correct. If you believe in the Constitution, which you've all taken an oath to protect, including all law enforcement officers, then you need to believe in protecting our constitutional rights. But we also now know that it is the popular thing. So we have amazing support from national organizations in our fight to end qualified immunity. And we got a polling done by YouGov. They are the polling agency that does, the polls for The Economist and for CBS News. So really amazing polling organization. And they found that nearly 2/3 of New Yorkers, this is New Yorkers across the state, 2/3 of New York's voters believe in ending qualified immunity. That means it is clearly the popular thing to do. And so we need to make sure that all of our representatives get on board in responding to the desires of their constituents.
And so for our audience members who want to get further information about how they can join the movement to end qualified immunity, I've provided instructions from Sandy in the text bar. In the chat bar. You can text 50409, and in your text box, please type NQINY.
All caps.
Just all caps. Okay.
All caps.
All caps. All right, everyone. All caps there. So
did you also say space, Katerina?
What?
There has to be space. Space.
Go and QINY. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that again, everyone. Let me get that right. So it's all caps and it's go and QINY. And here we go. This is the revised version, everyone. Multiple drafts are often necessary. So type go and QINY all in caps. Okay. I wanted to ask, when we usually talk about this issue, we rightly focus on the folks who suffer the immediate consequences, and that is the family and friends of victims who have to deal with the pain and anguish of having lost their loved one to essentially unlawful behavior on the part of our police officers. But the consequences extend well beyond the families and victims themselves. One of our listeners who I've seen for the first time and has been very engaged and actually provided us with a quote by a well-known Italian philosopher who I must confess I have got to, he's on my reading list. I haven't gotten to him yet, but notes the state of lawlessness that's essentially created when you have legal officers who can operate under the color of law and yet be shielded from any kind of repercussions if they should violate it. Moving beyond the families themselves, can you give us your sense as organizers in this area of the larger social impact that qualified immunity has had on the essentially the state of law in the United States, and what it's doing to police community relations?
It is, I would say it's absolutely, killing police and community relationships. I've seen, a lot of times if I look on social media, I see so many people that you wouldn't expect it say end qualified immunity. It brings together people from all different walks of life, all different, even, the Republic, and somebody asks, who's against it, who's talking against it. Republicans generally, in the state of New York. But I must say, there are libertarian groups that are all about ending qualified immunity. It's not just people that they would say, oh, people on the left, liberals, they're the only ones. No, there are people all over the place that say end qualified immunity. It's ruining the relationships between police and their communities. It makes their job less safe if the community doesn't trust them. And at this point, we're at an all-time low as far as trust and policing.
Patty, how about you? Can you add anything from your perspective as an organizer?
Yeah, definitely. And we talk about this a lot with young people. They always want to have conversations around like the future of police. And in a youth group recently, we were talking about it. And, it kind of came up, the question of, can we repair that relationship between the community and police? But what happens when you experience trauma and trauma again and again from a specific person or group, it becomes to be that trauma response. So that's the trigger when you are a victim of violence repeatedly, and then you get pulled over. Immediately as those lights go on and the siren goes on and you hear that, it triggers that fight or flight response within you. That's just our human nature. So it's something that we're working really hard to end, because if we can repair some of the relationship between community and police, then that could start to take us in a better direction. And I think this is also kind of a good time too, just to touch base. I don't think we said it yet about some of the myths around ending qualified immunity, because there are some people that believe, oh, if we pass this bill, that there's going to be some certain chain reaction results from ending qualified immunity, such as maybe people not signing up to be a police officer. But Katerina can explain a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, so to super underscore, what Darlene and Patty just were alluding to, right? Like there's no trust without accountability, and there's no accountability without ending qualified immunity. And so we are really lucky to work with amazing law enforcement organizations like the Law Enforcement Action Partnership Network, which is a group of current and former law enforcement officers who believe that you have to end qualified immunity in order to have trust between communities and law enforcement. So I just want to say that. But yeah, like Patty said, there's so many myths. I mean, when you get down to it, and we have an answer for every single reason why someone says that we should not end qualified immunity, because it's not rooted in the realities of the bill that we're trying to pass, or the realities of qualified immunity. So you'll hear, if we end qualified immunity, police officers are going to end up bankrupt. They're going to end up homeless on the streets. That is not true. Like Dr. Bob said, there is indemnification written into the bill. It's written into the bill to make sure that victims do get their awards, that they do get the money that the courts decide that they are entitled to, and to also ensure that there's systemic consequences for systemic problems. The other myth that you'll hear is that if we end qualified immunity, there will be a mass exodus of police, that all police officers will leave the police force. We can look to Colorado and New Mexico, which have both passed bills to end qualified immunity, and see what was the evidence. What's the evidence of what actually happens when you actually end qualified immunity? In Colorado, there was not a mass exodus of police. In fact, fewer police officers left in the year after they ended qualified immunity than in the 2 years before they ended qualified immunity. There's been no change to the amount of police officers that left the force as compared to any other like workforce attrition rates or number of people who left workforces because of COVID, right? What did we see in Colorado? The number of instances of misconduct went down. Again, that is what we want. We want to prevent the misconduct from happening in the first place. So that's what we saw. Again, you'll hear a myth that there will be a flood of lawsuits or a flood of frivolous lawsuits. In Colorado, there was not a flood of lawsuits because we saw misconduct went down. There was not a flood of frivolous lawsuits because police officers are protected against frivolous lawsuits to begin with. There are constitutional protections. Judges can decide to throw out a frivolous lawsuit at any point. You'll hear that police officers won't be able to make split-second decisions or reasonable mistakes. And again, that's false. If we end qualified immunity, they will still be entitled to protections under the Constitution that will allow for the courts to decide if they truly made a reasonable mistake, if they truly, made a warranted split-second decision, that they will be granted, their due protections. But qualified immunity prevents us from even getting to the point where the courts decide or work through those matters. Qualified immunity means that these cases get thrown out. Qualified immunity means that these cases don't get heard or decided on the facts and the merits. What we're asking for is for these cases to just be heard and for the courts to work out according to the Constitution, because qualified immunity is not a constitutional protection. It is not a law. It's a rule that was invented by the Supreme Court. So let these cases be heard and decided on the facts and the merits. So, when we hear the inflammatory or false rhetoric, unfortunately, about qualified immunity, we have answers for all of them because this is a really reasonable, really measured response to making sure that those who are harmed by the state have their fair chance at justice, can have their day in court. And when you break it down, when you actually look at what does the law that we're fighting to pass really do, you can't argue against it if you believe in protecting constitutional rights of people.
Mhm.
Right. I will add that right now we find ourselves engaged in a titanic struggle between communities and the police who are charged with enforcing the law, often leading to calls for what many would consider to be rather extreme solutions, including disbanding the police altogether and trying to create an alternative system. Until we have a wholesale reform of American society, including our gun laws, I remain skeptical as to whether or not that's going to be successful. But it's precisely because the police seem to be systematically immunized from any kind of accountability for their behavior that we see these expressions of frustration and resort to more and more, extreme kind of solutions, if you will. And so my hope is that in enacting a qualified immunity bill here in the state of New York, we might arrive at more reasonable kind of solutions that balance the need to hold people, police officers and others accountable, while at the same time ensuring that our communities are safe. So I would like to add, everyone, we're coming close to the end of the show. Are there any last words that you would like to provide with our audience, to our audience members? Again, where can they get, how can they get further contact with you? What is the upcoming event that's going to take place? I know it's in a couple of weeks. I wanted to type it in the bar.
Yeah.
Can you guys repeat it for us, please?
It's next Saturday, 11:30 until 2:30 at the Fountain in White Plains. I'm in Mamaroneck in Maine. We'll have free ice cream, Ben & Jerry's ice cream. There'll be speakers. We'll have an opportunity to talk more about this and for people to get on their phones and contact their legislators. May I just say one thing before we end this? You were talking about the consequences. There's one thing that's called post-traumatic stress syndrome, but we've got persistent traumatic stress syndrome. And we're talking about people who live in a state of incompletion as a way of life, as a result of excessive force and police encounters where there's no accountability. And I found it was Ari Melber on MSNBC, and he said that police killing rate is over 1,000 people each year. And that's consistent before George Floyd, after George Floyd, with all of the efforts that we go for police reforms. It never changes. And he says, and this data shows that, there's a full over 50,000 additional people aren't even counted in this because they will die of another diagnosis in an emergency room. And he said, if we don't find a way to eliminate qualified immunity in this country, the persistence of this trauma will continue, because reform that just tweaks policing but doesn't get to the essence of accountability will not make a dent in this police killing rate of over 1,000 each year, and an additional 50,000 that aren't even counted because people die in the emergency room of other causes due to excessive force. So if we care about humanity, if we care about our communities, to accept persistent trauma that's related to police violence and targeting Black people in this country, it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Sandy. So that's a day of family justice on Saturday, April 9th, in White Plains at Mamaroneck Avenue and
Maine.
And what time does it start again, Sandy?
11:30 until 2:30.
11:30 to 2:30. Thank you. I appreciate you repeating it for me. Here it goes. I hope I got all the information correct in the chat bar. Are there any other closing comments that you guys would like? Oh, I'm sorry, 2:30, not 2:20. Any other closing comments before we wrap up this evening's show?
Just that we hope to see everybody in White Plains. It'll, like Darlene said, this is normally a really solemn thing, but we also want to make it, fun for everyone. Bring your whole family. This is a very kids-friendly thing. And then on May 4th, we'll be up in Albany to have a Mother's Day action. That's the Wednesday before Mother's Day, because we know that there are many families across New York State who are not able to celebrate Mother's Day, for whom Mother's Day is not a day of celebration, because they have lost loved ones. And so we want to take that as one of our final big pushes. We'll have, if there's enough interest from Westchester, we're going to have a bus from Westchester, free bus from Westchester up to Albany, May 4th. And if you visit our website, nqiny.org, the Take Action page will have ways to sign up for that. And so hope to see everyone there, and nice to see you, Damon. Hi.
Hey.
Damon, what's up, man? It's good to see you, brother.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Damon.
Good evening.
We have a few minutes, D. Why don't you offer us your insights?
No, I just we really have to set the litmus test with our elected officials when dealing with qualified immunity. Every police department, they have what is called collective bargaining agreement, which is the contract between the union and the municipality. There could be fail-safes put in the contract, to deal with qualified immunity if our state elected officials don't have the gusto to pass a law. Politics is local. Police departments are local. So there's also ways to deal with it on a local level, on a municipality level, one by one. I mean, we have to start using the power of the vote and start putting elected officials in office that believe in it. So I really believe, and you have mayors. We vote these mayors in, and they appoint the police commissioner. And if the police commissioner is not doing, the police commissioner is not doing his job or her job, right? Then we have to get on the mayor. You know, it's just not at the state level, right? Like, we can still focus on the state, but let's not give these local politicians, our city council people, our mayors, out. So they'll say, "Oh, well, you know, you have to deal with that with state." No, you could do it. You could do it also. And let's say we got 43 municipalities just in Westchester County. Let's say we get 15 of them, you know, to change the contracts, to say that we're not going to back a police officer if he violates policy, procedure, and training. He's on his own. You know, that will push the state to change something, because we started getting these local municipalities to change. So I think we could, you know, we could kill the animal twofold, not just at the state, but at the local, at the local level. Westchester County is allegedly a Democratic county. You know, what are they doing?
Threefold. We got to do it on the federal level, the state level, and the local level.
Right.
It's funny, you know, everyone's kind of passes the buck, but hopefully we'll get this bill passed at the state level. So at least all of the 43 municipalities in Westchester get covered too.
No, absolutely. You know, I do agree, but you know, we have to hold these local ones. You know, they talk it, you know, to get elected, and then we don't hear nothing from them. You know, I mean, we can't even get civilian complaint review boards, you know, from city council people and you know, and mayors, and you know, so like, we really have to start holding our elected officials accountable on all levels of government. And they're not going to do a job. We have to start putting people in. You know, I've been doing this for 33 years, and it's the same argument. You know, when I started in 1990, I joined the National Black Police Association in 1992. You know, this was the conversation in 1992. Same conversation. It's not, I mean, there's no new conversation. You know, this is the same conversation from officers that were retired in 92, that they had this conversation back in the 70s and the 60s. You know, so we're still fighting the same fight.
Well, I hope we all take heart from the impending imminent victory in Albany to bring about a greater parity in educational funding, and draw the practical conclusion that the critical element that's going to determine whether or not we see the passage of the qualified immunity legislation rests with us. Too often we cede the power that we actually do have, and it will require that we be more engaged and take up a number of strategies, including Damon's insistence that we hold our elected officials accountable. I want to add, everyone, you know, police departments are creatures of local municipalities. And under our philosophy of the rule of law, officers are not to be considered exempt to the very same rules that civilians must live by if we are going to have, you know, a peaceful and prosperous society. And so I hope that we thank you all for joining us. We thank you for spearheading this fight. We look forward to continuing the discussion. And I do want to also offer up a special thanks to Dr. Leslie. I can't remember Dr. Leslie's last name. For
Branch.
All of the Branch. Thank you so much for all. I got so much over for all her wonderful comments, insights, and I hope that we may perhaps she'll join us on the airwaves to share some of her insights if she hasn't already done so. Her reputation precedes her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.
In White Plains on Saturday.
See you on Saturday. Ben and
Yes.
Jerry's ice cream.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
all. Don't forget, AJ, Damon,
Yes, I will be there.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for coming on the show. Both conversations, the conversation we had, the new deal for CUNY, and this conversation about ending qualified immunity. With everything that's going on, the NCAA championship was on this weekend, the Grammys are on, and right now, like, those who decided to watch and tune in and ride with us, we greatly appreciate it. This will always be on the website. By the end of the night, it'll be on the website. Dr. Brand said to Bob, LOL, thank you. Looking forward to it. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in until next week. Oh, also, keeping with the theme, people before politics, and not filling the airwaves with just nothing but nonstop politicians from now to the June primary. We the Rain suggested this last week. Yeah, we're going to continue it. We're doing Super Tuesdays where we will be interviewing candidates on Tuesdays so we can continue to have these conversations and put the people before the politics on Sunday. So, we will be as many candidates as we can on Tuesday around 6 o'clock. If you are a candidate and you want to be interviewed or you represent a candidate, it is your responsibility to get in touch with us. It is not my responsibility to call you and schedule an interview. So if you want to be interviewed by Black Westchester, your people or you need to be contacting us, and you better do it better sooner than later, because there's a lot of candidates and spaces are filling up. Also, we have discount rates if you advertise through April, May, and June. You get a little 20% discount. So take advantage of that now too. And that's it. Damon, any last words?
No. Let's keep pushing. Make sure you go to vitalhealthnutrition.net and get your vitamins.
Yes.
Nutrition.net. Make sure everybody get their vitamins.
Eat your veggies.
Yes.
God is in your vegetables. That's right. That's right. Make sure this is what we do.
Thank you.
Yes. And with that, until next week, peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are